Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's a special episode of the Creative Cranium. It's special to me because I got one of my favorite creators here. Please welcome Mr. Richard Fairgray. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you for welcoming me. Thank you for saying I'm one of your favorite creators. I mean, it could be a really long list, though. Like,
My list is kind of short, man. You know, I'm kind of I'm not like a gatekeeper or anything, but this is something that we're going to talk about tonight. You have what I would describe as very unusual and very refreshing material. And I want to sort of zero in on that and how you chose to do some of this. But before we go too far, why don't we start at the beginning? How did you get your start in comics?
I mean, I would love. I wish I could just make up a new story at this point because I've told the story about 17 million times. So everyone, and like, I feel like there are like diehards out there who are listening to it over and over again and being like, one day we're going to trip them up. We're going to find the bit where this ridiculous fucking origin doesn't make sense. The long and short of it is that I thought comics didn't exist because I'd never seen one in real life. I knew they were a thing that had existed in the past because Michelangelo read them, Bart Simpson read them. So I thought that if I could make my own, I would become a millionaire instantly. And it worked. I blackmailed my school librarian to get free photocopying. I made a little 8-page mini comic about a ghost, sold it at a school athletics day, made $400 and bought a buttload of Power Rangers toys. Sometimes I tell people that I bought Ninja Turtles toys, but it's because I want to sound cooler. I definitely bought Power Rangers.
Nice, nice. Well, you know, I appreciate the stories of the beginnings. And I guess one of the things I would say is why comics? Like, I'm fortunate enough to where I've been reading some of your stuff. We were talking backstage, and I think you have a really crisp writing style, and it's very inventive. Like, I don't even know. Do you have like novels or other written format things?
Not a lot. I did picture books. I've done 11, yeah, 11 children's picture books, and like all self-indulgent teenagers, I definitely wrote a couple of novels in high school, but they are not good. Um, or I'm pretty certain they're inaccessible. They are in Microsoft Word documents where the passwords are lyrics to Korn songs, but I couldn't tell you which lyrics to which Korn songs, because that's the kind of novelist I was. Um, Comics for me are just this like incredible medium where I don't think anyone's fully cracked what they can do yet, and I think most mediums can be described in that same way, but for me, comics are the one where people seem to be the most happy to go, okay, we've got it good enough, let's stop here. And I am determined to like find new things within it. It's also a medium that I can work in entirely on my own, so I can like absolutely run buck wild and find these new things on my own. I think that uh, every time you like start drawing a comic page, you're essentially entering into a battle with your reader to see how long you can hold their attention and how you can make their face move. And like a movie, obviously you're going to have different things on different parts of the screen, whatever. But like a comic, I can actually say like, I know they're probably going to start up there. What would I have to do to make them start down here? Like, what trick am I going to have to pull to get their eye to see this part of the page first? And the thing that makes it all possible is that, in general, when we look at an image, we look at it from the bottom left and go up. That's pretty universally understood. That's how the human brain takes in images, and
Okay.
reading is working against that, going from top left to bottom right, right? Or in other languages, obviously the other way, but still, this like the top to bottom that makes sense to us in our brains is not how we see the image. So you've always got this freedom to say, I'm going to catch you on the way up. That's what I'm going to fucking do. When you enter this page, I'm going to catch you on the way up, and I'm going to give you some new place to go. And it's like a lot of it is pettiness. Anytime someone posts a thing about like how to guide the eye through a comic page, I look at it and go, that seems too fucking easy though. What if I went wild with it? And I mean, you saw on this one, there's the scene where it's a splash page high angle shot of a mall in Vancouver where I start at the top of the page and walk and come up 2 escalators, turn around, go across down the elevator and
Yeah.
so it does this like sort of reverse N shape. Or later on, there's sort of a splash page where I've broken it up into panels, but it is me walking up and around through a backstage area. Um, Again, a lot of this is coming from the fact that I write comics about very small moments, And the challenge is to take a small moment and make it as visually engaging as it would be if like Superman was punching a big monster.
And I think you've succeeded largely. I'd even say it's more visually engaging. So you got some pretty creative panel work, and you made a reference in one of them to Wally Wood's 22 panels that always work. And I admit I use that all the time because I'm never sure what to do. But you basically defy all those rules.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I want to ask you, what were your influences, in this case, in art?
I know the first comic I actually read was when I was 16. I read I Feel Sick by Jonan Vasquez. I think it's really like, and obviously like by that point I was a teenage goth. I was deep into making comics that looked like shitty versions of that. And then someone saw it and was like, you need to check out this book. You can see that influence in a lot of my stuff. There are a lot of very small panels, tiny moments, especially things like watches and like strange silhouettes of things to frame different parts. I moved away from the goth comic stuff when I stopped being that, and because I got fat, and you don't look good as a goth if you're me. There are many fat goths who look amazing. I was not one of them. I have very short legs. It's not a good combo. Also, I couldn't find a good black coat, so I just had this dark blue one, and it was always a bit wrong. It was very much like we have a goth at home, you know?
Yeah, right.
So I think that was like a big influence. I think I read all of the obvious things when I had a high school teacher who was massively inappropriate and was like, you should read these things.
Wait, hold on, be a little more specific. Tell us what you mean by that.
I mean, it's in the books.
Okay, fair enough.
I became best friends with my high school film teacher, and we would hang out at his house and talk about comics every day, and it never occurred to me to question it. I then ended up co-writing something with him for the better part of 15 years, and it was an incredibly toxic and soul-destroying situation that held me back in my career pretty massively. Yeah, it's good stuff. For more on that, read Octopus, or Too Hot for Octopus, where I go into grave detail about things.
I don't think I've seen that one. Like I say, I've only seen the little bit of your work, which I saw the first time at Baltimore, which 2 years ago now. And of course, you were kind enough to share this latest with me, The Ambitious Failures.
You think it's 2 because you think it's 2 years because I've put out so many books. It is less than a year since we met.
Oh, no kidding.
I've only been to Baltimore once.
I guess it was 1 year ago. Are you going to go this year?
Of course. I've requested the same table. I hope you're at the same table.
I'm not sure yet if I'm going. I requested to be a guest, which it looks like that's backfiring on me.
Oh, yeah, I imagine it would.
Yeah. I'm looking at, I told my followers, I'm trying to start throwing my weight around it.
Everyone I've heard request to be a guest at that show, it has backfired on them. This is no slight on you.
Well, that makes me feel a little bit better. And, this isn't a thing where, how do I want to say this? It isn't because I'm this big ego and I think I'm this great guy, but I've got a little bit of a long-standing tradition with those guys. That's 5 years in a row. I did a double table. I do a little bit of video work and some advertising, but I understand that people got to make money, so I'm not mad about it. But one of my strategies.
But Tim, what you did is you set up a situation where you repeatedly paid them and said, "Hey, can I not pay you?" And they were like,
"Exactly right, exactly right."
Us.
Well, and we were talking earlier about. And this is something I'd like to get your opinion on as well. My strategy for this year, 2024, can't quite say it, is that I was trying to do the conventions that I was invited to. And what that means is instead of doing maybe 4 big ones, which is what I used to do, I do 6 or 7 or 8 smaller ones. And for me, it's been pretty successful so far, at least financially. Like for me, the Baltimore weekend, that's, I dropped some bread at that. Between the hotels and the parking and the tables and this and that.
I mean, next year you should just reach out and be like, Richard, what's this Airbnb situation? We always have like 9 of us for Baltimore. It's great.
Yeah, and I think I know a couple of those guys too, right? Who's your posse this year?
It's my usual crowd from Twitter.com, Trevor and Stokes and Pat and George and.
Yeah, I love those guys. I'm a little bit friends with Trevor.
Yeah,
he's a good guy. I feel he's putting out some great books too.
I mean, you just read my comic. You saw him there.
yeah, exactly. So I guess that's one of the questions I'd want to ask you. First, How many conventions are you doing a year now?
This year it's a lot. This year it's 20 something, I think. I know I've got I just wrote down two charts on my two columns on my whiteboard, one that says unstoppable forces and the other says immovable objects. And the immovable objects are the cons that I have to do, and the unstoppable forces are the books that have to come out.
Yeah.
And I think there's 10 more this year.
10 more books this year coming out?
10 more conventions this year. There's
10 more conventions.
11 more books this year.
Still to come out.
Yeah.
Wow. And let me ask you, how do you map these out? Do you like script them out, or is it free form? How do you do it?
It just varies from book to book. Like, my whole thing is I cannot let myself get bored. My challenge every day is, how do I make this interesting? The book that you just read did not have a script. There was no plan at all. It was page at a time. I would just pace around in the hallway outside my office until I came up with an idea for what would happen on that page. I wouldn't thumbnail. I would do nothing. I would just come in and start drawing right off the bat.
Interesting. And maybe that's better to do it that way.
I mean, it worked. Like, my experiment was, have I made enough comics at this point that I can make them on instinct? Can I have a story that just, without me having to even try, will come together? Will everything I set up pay off? And honestly, by the end of it, I felt like there were a few things where I was like, is this paying off too neatly? Like, did I find my way to this too coincidentally? Does this feel overworked, if anything? So I don't want to give away anything from the book, but like the coming home to find the dinosaur, did that feel a little too overworked? I don't know.
Yeah, I just started chapter 2, and that's really good too. You got a little bit of mixed media and this kind of thing.
Sorry. I had assumed you'd finished chapter 2. I forget that my comics are long. I always think of comics as really quick.
Well, and it wasn't really so much that, I will tell you. I took my time reading them, and I was on like the 3rd page. Actually, I sent you a notice like, damn, brother, this is good. And I have kind of been following you since that time in Baltimore. And like I was telling some of my viewers, I was like, what's that guy doing over there? Like, you consistently had a line the whole time and a significant presence. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like you were being promoted by a publisher. It was like, it looks like you do all the lifting.
I do everything, yeah.
Do you ever suffer from any kind of a burnout or anything like that?
I suffer from massive anxiety and fear of death. Like, life is finite, and I have to get books made. I, as I have said many times, I make books to apologize for existing. And I need to get those done. I'm trying to get 300 out before I turn 40, which is next April. So fingers crossed. And that's 300 out, not 300 finished. That book needs to be in people's hands before my birthday.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. It's certainly a prolific output. So now let me make sure I got this straight. So you write them, you draw them, you letter them. Mm-hmm. You're a real one-man show.
Yeah, I color them. I do everything. With Ambitious Failures, I really, I've spent more. The older I get, the less I want to use a computer. And so since I did Octopus, my first memoir last year, that was like my first completely hand-drawn, unedited. I photographed it instead of scanning it, so it was like actually an uneditable object. And then like XYZ of Frankenstein was a similar thing with the sculpture covers and everything. And this year I was like, I need to make sure I can still color a fucking comic. So I did Wet Cement, which is the sort of mix between like, I scanned it in a way that all of the pencil showed, and I kind of used the pencil to like add to the shading of it. And I wanted to have this like grimy, gritty feel, but then I did like traditional digital coloring. And then with this one, I wanted to just like, I was like, what if I could use all of my desks? What if every desk in my office was in use for this one comic? What if everywhere I looked, there was like nothing that could distract me from this, like no project that could distract me from the project I'm working on? And so I had like the computer was going, the scanner was going, my photography setup was going. I was like the mixed media stuff it's actually more present in the first one, where I was like scanning each page multiple times through the production of the page, and then layering the earlier and later versions and setting them to different like setting them as different adjustment layers over top of each other. And like that slight imperfection you get of the paper moving on the scanner or whatever, or like the paper buckling a little bit from the ink, creates this sort of like strange haze effect or strange like jittery effect on certain parts. And I was able to like move those around to make it feel like it was linking to the story. And the rule was never start a new page until the last one is finished. So it wasn't like I could make these pages with a plan and then go and like do them all in one go. And I didn't write down, I made no notes. So all of the like how much do I adjust this by? Do I take note of the numbers and do this next page the same? Or do I just like try and like eyeball it? And it was all eyeballed. And I think it worked. I think everything worked out well. And then I started doing this thing where I think it's page 18 of the first chapter. There's it's a 16 panel page where I say, and I'll make another comic, I'll make another comic, I'll suck another dick, I'll make another comic. And what I did for that one is I drew the page, I did all the lettering's done by hand, scanned it, and then I digitally put in the covers for all the comics that I have coming up that are finished. And then I printed that out in black and white, cut out at actual size, cut all the comic covers out, and cut out where the lettering needed to go, which was already on the page, glued that on, and then re-scanned it, and then put that in underneath the original scan with the digital versions of the covers. And so like that's why they have that like kind of double vision effect on all of those.
Oh, yeah.
And like, you know, anytime I wanted to repeat a panel from earlier for something like, hey, remember this? Like, remember when we saw that the skeleton with the dildo in its mouth? Like, I'm not going to just cut and paste the skeleton with the dildo in the mouth. I'm going to print out that page and literally tear out that piece and glue it over it, cut out the square where the lettering needs to go. And like it gives it this like visceral, like I want this comic.
It looks cool. It looks cool, man. That's one of the things I really liked. And like there's certain things with like the focus, and it's very visually striking. But I want to ask you this question. I mentioned about a lot of this is about trying to find our voice as writers. Okay. The first question I'd want to ask about that, how do I want to say this? Like I get it that memoir is not something that everyone can do effectively. Some people say it's the hardest one because it's, you know, you've got to be honest with yourself and honest with the reader. So the first question is I'm going to ask you, why memoir?
I had been being told for years that I should write a memoir. I live a life. My general approach to life is if something looks more interesting than what I'm doing, I'll go do that instead. And or if someone gives me an option, if there are two options, I always think, what will be a better story later? I had this big revelation, which I'm spoilers for the book when I was young, but my story in that Miserable Fun comes from this one day I was at a really shitty comic convention, like one of those terrible like basement ballroom in a like bad hotel.
Yeah, I know him. I know him well.
I was sitting there with an old friend of mine, and no one had walked past the table in like 27 minutes, like no one. And I started giggling, and she said, what? And I said, you know that bit in the first episode of The X-Files where everyone in the world loses 9 minutes? And she was like, yeah. I was like, we're experiencing everyone else's 9 minutes right now. That's what's happening. We are the answer to like that mystery from the fucking X-Files pilot. I just solved it. And I had this realization that like, if you're having a terrible time, just think about how fun it's going to be to tell someone about it later. And it's the concept Miserable Fun, where if you can think about it as a story, you will never be miserable again. You will make misery fun. And so people have been telling me for a long time, write a memoir, whatever. Like to the point where like an ex of mine, after we broke up, she emailed me and said like, just so you know, if you ever do write a memoir, I really want to read it. Please let me know. I was like, that's a weird fucking email to get from an ex. But whatever. It wasn't the last weird email I got from her, so it's fine.
I'm curious what she thought of the subject matter. I guess this might be a good point to touch on.
I have no idea. No idea.
Yeah, we are talking a little bit about some adult subject matter. Admittedly, it's not for everybody. And to be honest with you, Richard, I'm really surprised by how much I liked it, because I think that
Did I awaken something in you, Timothy?
I'm not sure if I'm ready to go that far, but I will say that it's a really fresh perspective. And I don't mean just for comics, I mean for memoir also. Like it's something that I was actually, after I went through the first chapter, I'm like, I'm going to read that again. Because I laughed out loud a couple of times. And there was a couple of parts. I'll give you a quick example. Like you have a nice way of the pages have a nice beat to them. I always say a page is a little bit like the song, right? And you got to finish on the right beat or the song doesn't sound right. But for doing it in the kind of the method that you're doing it, they have a very succinct, sort of almost a poetic ending on each page. I realize that's not really a question, but I guess I would say
no,
this.
I was just, you were going to give an example of a thing that made you laugh out loud, and then you did.
Oh well, before I said anything, is it okay? You probably don't want me to share any pages on the.
Oh no, go for it.
Okay,
go wild. Like, we've got like
we'll talk while I bring one up.
There's less than an hour left on the campaign. If anyone wants to see these pages, they can fucking see them.
Tell you what, let's do that because we want to see if we can drum up a little bit of juice for the campaign. Because I could talk about this at length, but I guess the thing that I would say, I remember the first one. It was neck lumpiatrics, which for some reason just struck me as funny. And of course, viewers, you got to see this. The story does not go where you think it's going to go, and it is full of laughs. But the thing that I really liked is it has this cool quote, and please correct me, Richard, because I'm going to mess it up. It's an ambitious failure is more interesting than a mediocre success.
Ambitious failures are always more interesting than mediocre success.
Yeah, exactly.
It is the incredibly cutting. My friend Theo and I, who my followers will know of because we wrote the 52 funny books together, which I'm giving out free with books. He and I have had this conversation for well over a decade now, and we kind of use that as shorthand. Whenever someone does a comic that can be like cross-pitched, like I don't want to shit on anyone's comics, so I'll use like a TV example. Like when people say that Grey's Anatomy is like, what if ER was crossed with Friends? Oh, sure. That kind of incredibly lazy, here's two things you already like, now let's throw them together and like see what sludge gets churned out. and you see it all the time in comics because people, like a lot of people just like making comics, whether they love the comics they make or not, because it is quite fun. Right. And they'll do like, what if outer space met everything I can think of is a comic that someone I know has made, and I'm not trying to shit on anyone's comics. Right. But it's
in fact, you mentioned that it's in your script that it's one of the unwritten rules. I'm going to mess that up. Do something like other creators. We don't
unspoken rules that people don't review bad indie comics. Correct. That is about a specific person, and people. I'm really hoping people will know who I'm talking about with that one.
Oh. Well, I didn't know, so that one will have to be a mystery. You can tell me in the private chat. But I will say I agree with your assessment. And like I said before, I'm not a gatekeeper in any way. And I talk to lots and lots and lots of comic creators. And I always, try to say some really polite things. And I've backed hundreds of them on Kickstarter. But some of them, honestly, I can't even get through. And you ask them the questions and like, well, I don't really like comics too much, or I never really followed any comic creators. I just like to make comics. Yeah. And honestly, that's probably a good enough reason. But then when you get something like Ambitious Failure, which is just like notably powerful storytelling.
Thank you.
Let's do a quick shout out. Call to action. That's on Kickstarter right now. Ambitious Failures by Richard Fairgray. I got to recommend this one. I was amazed by it. I'm still working my way through chapter 2 right now, but maybe if we want to take a look at a page, I'll pull something up here too. The design. I mean, actually, we got to mention it's a little bit not safe for work.
Look, the first 20 pages are largely about dick sucking.
Yeah, he's not lying.
I don't want to make it like it's not like it is, but it's not like here, watch me suck dicks. I don't think there's like one point where you actually see a dick in my mouth, and it's like
a side. It's like it's a side shot.
No, it's in the. I mean, you see me fingering a pussy, and you see me grabbing some titties, and you see me getting punched in the face. But like, I think you see me sucking a dick in the reflection in a bottle of whiskey.
Oh, you know what? I'll have to go back and I want to double check that now.
Yeah, because it's the two sides of the whiskey bottle. You can see me, a gin bottle, sorry. You can see me sucking a dick in the whiskey, and then on the other side of the bottle, you can see me snorting a line of coke.
Sure. So like I was saying, there's like, when you lay out a page like this, And I'm asking Richard because I really don't know. Like I said, my weakness probably as a writer, and I have many weaknesses, is that I approach, I'm a moderately, I'm a songwriter, right? So I tend to approach like, oh, here's where the drums go, here's where the guitar goes, and it's got to finish right on 16.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, everything's really mapped out for better or for worse. Probably maybe not for the better in my case, once I've seen a couple of years. But in this example right here, do you map this out at all? So you got one big splash, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many panels is that? It's certainly an unusual page.
I think that one's a 10-panel page.
Yeah, look, he's fallen off the bottom. Guys, this is really creative.
I knew that I wanted I knew that I wanted the core image to be the board itself and the dice rolling across it, and then I wanted the dice to leave the main panel to hit me and knock me down. And
so you start with a concept.
So yeah, I had the idea. I had the idea for it, and then I thought, okay, drawing a board game in perspective is really easy if it's a basic like Chutes and Ladders type of vibe. And I thought, but that's not going to be that interesting, and then I'm always going to be cutting over myself if I walk back and forth on it. So I thought, well, what if I start it with, if I actually designed the board? And so I designed the entire board game. There's actually a version of that page where it is every square on the board game has like instructions for what to do next, and I kind of did it like an entire comic career.
That sounds cool too.
And so I designed that as like as a real board game, and then I scanned that and put it into the right perspective to fit with where I wanted it to be on the page, so I could walk through it. And then I just used a light table to trace over it. And I realized that Todd Klein did a Game of Life, for like a parody of the Game of Life as a print for like having a comic career, and I didn't want to rub up against that. And two, a lot of it would have been kind of unreadable, and it would have gotten in the way of like the storytelling, because it would have implied that I was like reaching different points in the comic journey as I was walking through the page.
Gotcha. Yeah, it does make sense when you say it like that.
Yeah. I regret this line here. I wish I'd written, oh, look, the illusion of movement. That's all it needed to be. This is too wordy.
Well, since you mentioned it, that's one of the parts that I liked. And that's a great example of ending on a beat.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice page, Richard.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So, getting back to the voice, like a lot of people this is likely going to be a different answer for you.
By the way, I also want to point out this is an incredibly fucking expensive page because it really is drawn on those 7 other pieces. And then scanned in, and then I
so you glued it on?
I drew it all, I scanned it, and then I drew the outline of each piece of paper and matched it up. So it's a fucking $16 page. God damn it.
Good thing you're making that big comic book money.
Yeah, 2 monocles stuck together. People think it's glasses.
Well, so I wanted to circle back to the voice part. So now, and like I say, your answer is probably going to be different, but like most people, for writers, they try and emulate another writer or maybe frame one a little bit, right? Like I'm a huge Richard Matheson fan, and also I'm a Pearl Buck fan if you like any of her writing. And I've noticed that in my case, I try to emulate their sentence structures, right? So was there anybody, when you're finding your voice, that you said, well, I want it to sound kind of like this, or I want it to look kind of like that? Or did you just launch and it became what it became?
I think because I started so young, I never really had like a writer who I was obsessed with before I started. Like you can look at Brian Michael Bendis and be like, oh, he's writing like David Mamet. I see it. And I think I kind of wish I did have that. I kind of wish that I could map it onto something, but I'm kind of a mess of all different things. I know that I think a lot about like the rules in my comic are often based on what does one character know that other characters don't, and about like holding back information. And that's very much because I read Treasure Island when I was 6.
Oh,
and,
sure.
like, the thing that I got really obsessed with in that book was that like the reason it switches perspective is because the other characters need to like fill in these gaps for the reader, not for each other. And it becomes so exciting because you know everything before the characters do, without it ever feeling like you've been given the answer. Also, I didn't know what a coracle was when I read that book because I don't know shit about boats. And so in my mind, I just like, coracle, it's probably like a giant seashell of some kind. I bet they have those on an island. And so whenever I imagine Treasure Island, I imagine when he boards the ship when Jim reboards the ship to go spying, he's doing it in a giant fucking seashell.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's interesting because you make the point about the audience knows something that the other characters don't know. And I was reading, I'm always really interested in mystery novels. I've never written one, but I do write my stories. I write them backwards. I think you and I talked about that before. I start with the last page and I write them backwards because I want to end on an emotional note. I try to make emotional stories, or at least that's what I'm trying to do. How much success will be for the reader to determine. But I was reading about an old series called Columbo. Do you by any chance remember who Columbo is?
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy with the rumpled raincoat. And anyway, he's a perfect example. It's called The Inverted Detective. And what you do is you show the audience everything right up front, and then you have the characters sort of fumble through and do everything wrong.
It's not a whodunit, it's a how catch him.
Yeah, exactly right. So I guess that kind of works in your case.
Yeah, I mean, I try to write every different kind of story I can. And I will sometimes have like an idea of like, what is the thing that needs to happen, and then how can I map it onto a character? Sometimes I'll have a character and be like, what the fuck's going to happen to this person? To get back to like the memoir of it all, the reason I started Octopus was because at the beginning of COVID, I thought I was going to die. Like, my husband was in Canada, I was in LA, the borders were closed, and I was like, we're all going to die. This couldn't go worse, And I thought I should get massively introspective and write a story that covers like maybe like not my entire life, but like how I got to the exact place I was right there, and like how I found something that made me happy. And when I got like 3 chapters in, I showed it to my agent, and she said, "Hey, Richard, you work in kids' books. If you ever show this to anyone, your entire career is going to be gone. Just say goodbye." So I decided that I could just make whatever the fuck I wanted. I'd put it in a drawer, and it would be found after I died imminently. And then it would be like, "Oh, look, Richard made a masterpiece. Shame he's dead." And then because of doing that, like it just kind of unlocked something for me. And then when I released Haunted Hill, I was still doing not picture books. I was doing middle grade graphic novel, middle grade fantasy series called Cardboardia, and I was doing interviews for both books at once. And Haunted Hill is like, it's not a dirty book. There's lots of swears. There's no nudity. There's no sex really. Like there's a scene early on where she talks about the sex club that she just got a job at as the janitor. And you see what goes on at the sex club, but there's no dicks. There's not even any butts. Like you see like the top of my husband's head rimming someone in a sling, but you don't actually, you know what it is if you know what it is, right?
Right.
But still, I was talking a lot about this stuff in these interviews. And so every time I would do an interview, I would say, right before we went live, I would say, which book is this for again? Just so I can gauge my level here. And I was doing this interview, and right before we started, before I asked the question, the guy said, "By the way, I don't often get to read the person's stuff before we really talk, and I have to fake it. But I read Haunted Hill, and I fucking love it." And I was like, great, we're talking about a Haunted Hill. Cool. And first question comes up, and he says, "So, Richard, a lot of the places in your book are based on real places. What's your favorite?" And I said, "Definitely Slamtown, the sex club where Eva works. It's based pretty closely on Slammer, my favorite sex club here in LA. It's prison themed. Their big claim to fame is they have the longest succatorium in Southern California." And he looks at me confused, and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, a succatorium is like a long wall of glory holes. What makes it different at Slammer is that it's split level, so the person doing the sucking can stand up, which is really good because it's the kind of place where you don't want to be on your knees because the floor gets pretty gushy."
Right, you wouldn't want that.
And he said, "Okay, but we're talking about your book Cardboardia, which largely takes place in Brooklyn." And I said, "No, it doesn't. It takes place in Queens, idiot. It was a live stream to librarians."
Uh-oh.
And the thing is, like, I didn't get in trouble. Like, it didn't fucking matter. People were, some people probably didn't buy Cardboardia. I don't give a shit. That book sucks. It's my worst book. But, like, a lot more people knew who I was, and a lot more people were interested in talking to me about the books that I cared about making. And from that point on, I was like, absolutely fuck it. I'll make whatever goddamn book I want. I will not shy away from anything. And like I say, I have always said that I don't want to make small talk. I want our first conversation. I want you to start by saying, my mother just died or something exploded next to me. I want something that you can connect over. And then we don't have to be like, hi, so good to meet you. I think we know some of the same people. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Like big talk right away. And so I've never been shy about talking honestly about myself. I start from a point of feeling ashamed for existing. So it's not like anything else can make that worse. And so I think my voice just comes from I don't want to say an aggressive honesty, because I'm not a person who, I'm not here to like, you asked me to be on the show. I'm not here to push my shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's, I'm not the person who's going to show up and be like edgelord mania as a 39-year-old, but I am going to be the person who, if someone says, why do you like this thing? I'll tell them the reason. Or if they say, what are you doing this weekend? I will not hide it.
Yeah. And by the way, I appreciate your honesty. When we first met, we kind of hit it off right away, even though I guess I should say this. We mentioned earlier, some of this material, viewers, can be kind of shocking. And I would say it like this. Well, let's put it in the form of a question for Richard. Is it a chicken or the egg thing? Like, do you go into it in your mind saying, hey, I'm going to be as honest as I can be. And if it comes out shocking, so be it. Or do you say, you know what, I'm going to make something that's going to shock the shit out of everyone? How do you start?
Kind of neither. It really is just like, hey, what happened? I don't want to shock people, because I think that the only time I want to shock someone is if I'm building a haunted house, a thing that I also like to do. I want to give someone a quick surprise. I want to create stories that last with people. I will sometimes twist how people perceive things by building them up for one thing and then giving them something a little bit different. That it's very much like, hey, you think this thing is funny, here's the thing that undercuts it. Or I'll do the like, hey, I'm sorry that I'm making this so emotional and sincere, let me give you a little joke.
Yeah, I get that. I get that from you.
I want something to have a lasting impression more than I want to shock.
Sure. Yeah, and it's and on top of that, like I say, the writing's really crisp, but it's the way the pages are constructed. I think it's very memorable.
Thank you.
So let's jump back to talking about the Kickstarter.
All right.
Let me switch pages there. It should be this fella. There we go. So the first thing, I'm encouraging everybody, go over there right now to Ambitious Failures. You got to check this out, man. It's really, really good. Let's see if we can get a couple backers here tonight. And who do you think, Richard, well, like, I guess I would say, who do you think this book is aimed at? That must be hard to nail down.
That is very hard to nail down. I mean, I know that my memoir stuff, the first memoir was Octopus. The second one was Too Hot for Octopus, which was the handwritten prose journal of the backstories. I know that this is a story that people are sometimes surprised they like. Sometimes, like, I give them the pitch and they think it's going to be like a fun roller coaster, and then they get it and they're a lot more moved. Like, not to brag, but Octopus is a book that has caused, confirmed, at least 3 marriages to end. Yeah. I'm not sorry. And it's not because, like, I'm not saying they're leaving them for me. I'm saying, like, generally straight women buy Octopus from me at a convention. They seem very engaged by it. They come back the next day and they tell me that they're leaving their husband because they don't want to. Like, a lot of Octopus is about the theme of not getting trapped, and they don't want to be trapped. And so they leave their husbands because of my book. I think it's a book for everyone. Honestly, I think that it's the book that the people who would normally hate this kind of story come back. Like, I get a lot of people saying, like, actually, Octopus is my favorite of your books. And I keep talking about Octopus. I know we're talking about Ambitious Failures, but, like, they really are a pair. Okay. Octopus was, it's 18 months of my life where I get divorced, steal a boat, try to disappear at sea, get jerked off by a supervillain in a train station, move to Hollywood, meet a nice man, and try not to destroy everyone by turning into an octopus. That is the pitch I've given a million fucking times at shows.
I gotta check that out.
But this is the companion piece. This is I said I'd never make another memoir because the shit that I went through in that 18 months was really hard. It was a big transitional period of my life. And I when people say, will you do a volume 2? I was like, yeah, sure. Let me just go through some awful stuff for your enjoyment. And then when I realized that I had this 10 days off, between cons this year, I thought there's a lot that I want to talk about. Some of it's to do, like, I had a little idea about what it is that makes a comic good, and I didn't really feel like making any of my other books that I had on the slate. And so I just made this. And it wasn't, it was meant to be more like an essay. I had this idea of like, what if I did some, like the Ambitious Failure title came from me thinking, I don't think I can draw Batman very well. I wonder what would happen if I tried. I'll try my very best to draw Batman and then write a fucking essay next to it about how that works. And then somehow I was like, oh, I need to explain why I'm doing it. And I started the first page. And I never drew Batman. I just let this book happen. And it's feeling very weird because, like, as of this afternoon, I'm back on a scripted book. And it's like really comforting and easy. I'm like, oh, look, I can just like look at my layouts and know what I'm meant to draw next. I don't have to think.
Do you ever do any kind of like coaching or teaching for artists that are trying to learn page making?
Not on purpose.
Not on purpose.
You know, people come to me with things and I help them. I like talking about comics with people. I like seeing other people are putting in the effort to make comics and that they're trying to learn to do things better. And so I will give up far too much of my time going through someone's book with them or their script with them and giving them answers or giving them suggestions or whatever. But no, nothing official.
I'm going to remember that.
I had this idea the other day that I should teach people how to do crime because I realized I'm really good at crime. And other people, like, I have this ability to see opportunities to do crimes. My mother is you know, she's not a criminal, but she has the mind of one. And when I was 6 years old, my mother told me and my older sister a story about how when she was a kid, she was a fat kid. And so when the family went to buy ice creams, she would walk slower than the rest of the family and eat her ice cream as fast as she could and then drop the cone on the ground and start crying so that they'd buy her another one thinking that she dropped the entire thing. And my older sister, who sucks, said, I wouldn't do that. That's stealing. And my mother looked at her and without hesitating said, I'm always disappointed in you.
Well, you got an interesting family dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But I just, you know, I funded my first feature film by stealing money from ATM machines because I just looked at an ATM machine once and I was like, I know how to steal from that. That seems easy. I have, like, I stole a couch from Target recently just to see if I could.
Okay, I got to ask on that one. How do you steal a couch? That seems like a...
You walk into Target with a receipt in your pocket. You go to the furniture section. You pick up a couch. You carry it out with the receipt pressed against the couch, flapping around. You walk to the service desk and you wait in line to return the couch. After standing there holding a heavy-ass couch for a couple of minutes, you just yell loudly, fuck this, I'll just keep it. And you walk out.
I might actually try that now.
I didn't want a couch, so I carried it for like half a block and then just dumped it on the side of the road.
It sounds like you need a partner in crime.
No, I just need to, like, I need to charge people a lot of money to teach them how to do crime.
Maybe that's the next book.
Do you ever think about how much cash there must be at a convention?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And how many people are in identical fucking costumes and how fucking hard it would be to identify which person in a fucking Naruto robe it was who did it?
You got a point.
Yeah. Like, there's got, like, I'm gonna, I used to help run the comic section at a convention, and I was like, I would see the bags of cash. There was a point where the guy just had like $17,000 in coins in a big sack in his living room. He bought a car with cash after a convention once. Naruto robes, they're all identical. Everyone who wears one is kind of an asshole, so everyone's already a suspect. Slip right in.
Yeah, you know, sometimes I think I'm in the wrong line of work. It seems to me that the guy making the most money is the con organizer.
Mm. Yeah.
I mean, at the rate they're selling tables, Baltimore's a good example of that.
I mean, think about how much it costs to rent that venue.
Well, yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think they make a huge profit. What I'm saying is they have a massive amount of cash. No one should rob a convention. I want to be clear, I'm not endorsing this behavior. No one should rob any convention that I'm at, especially.
Yeah.
Because it would, like, imagine the chaos it would take away from my sales. Someone the other day, I do really well at conventions. I'm very good at selling books. I don't do super well online, but I do very well in person because I'm, charming and fun.
You are.
Someone recently was like kind of challenging me on this, and I said to them, like, they asked me, and I was a little drunk, so I was too honest, and I told them how much I'd made at the show. And which is always a mistake. Anytime I tell someone how much I've made at the show, they get angry at me. And what I'd said to them was like, here's the thing. Everyone at this show who's buying from me, there's a chance that they've bought from me before. I've done this show more than once. Every show that I do more than once, I will have 5 to 10 people who show up who say, what do you have that's new since last year? And then we'll buy everything. Which means in an average year is about $250 worth of new material because I work fast. And then if you're that obsessed with me, you'll probably buy some variant covers. So that can double or triple that price.
Right. What's your, let's see, you've got graphic novels and you do floppies too, right?
Yeah.
So I want to say what's your average price point, but that probably doesn't make much sense with your.
I do on Kickstarter. I do $15 for a floppy. I try and give you some quality content. I try, I know that that's expensive for comics, but this is indie comics. It's what's normal.
Yeah.
And I gotta eat. And I don't eat well. Let's be real. I eat a lot of Trader Joe's frozen buffalo wings.
So what's the price point on the graphic novel?
Anything above 64 pages, I do 25. And then if it's an ongoing series, I'll usually do 3 for 50. So Haunted Hill is 3 for 50 at this point. And I'll do like discounts. I sometimes will do special convention editions of things which are printed through a cheaper printer, smaller print runs, and I don't have the special features in them. And so I can knock them down to 10.
Gotcha. Yeah, it was definitely apparent that year we were in Baltimore because if you remember, there was people around us, several of them, who were saying things like, "Oh, this is the worst year, and I'm not making any sales." And I remember thinking we were banging it up over at our table. It was my best con ever. Yeah. And I look right around the corner, and there's Richard. I don't think you were ever not with a customer.
No, I mean, like, this is the thing that drives me nuts is people will come over and like talk to you at the con, like other creators. I'm like, why aren't you at your table? They're like, oh, it's quiet. I'm like, well, it's a lot more quiet if you're not there.
Right. Exactly.
I guarantee you're not making any fucking sales if you're not there. I'm also like in a weird position because I have, I'm in America on an extraordinary person visa, which technically alien with extraordinary abilities is what I am designated as. So
okay, gotcha.
Like health. So to get my green card, which I'll be applying for in a couple of years, I have to prove a substantial level of income from my chosen industry. My chosen industry is comics. I'm not allowed to earn any money from anything outside of comics. So I have to make money at this. I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
So it's a little terrifying because, like, one, I got to keep making new shit every goddamn day. I do not get a day off ever. Today is my 8-year anniversary of the day I met my husband.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. I am finishing a Kickstarter campaign. I am doing a video live stream with Timothy B. Fling. I have been working all goddamn day putting together a book to be sent off to print that no one knows about yet. Because, surprise, do an extra book, why not? And after this, I will work until midnight.
Damn, don't kill yourself, brother.
No, like, what else is there? Move back to New Zealand? No.
I got a buddy who says to me often, he's one of my, I think I might have mentioned to you, I joined this band about a month or two ago. And he always says it's about musicians, but the same is true with artists and writers. You don't necessarily have to be the best. You just have to last the longest.
Yeah.
And the meaning is it's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
Yeah.
But we are just about to our time. So let's take one more look at ambitious failures. Richard, give us a pitch and a little walkthrough of this Kickstarter campaign.
Okay, so this is it's a mixture of memoir and essay comic about where good ideas come from and how to know when one should stick around. It is funny. It is heartfelt. It is it's an exploration of self-destruction. And I think it's the closest I'll ever get to making a comic purely about comics. There's the second dick in the
There it is. You know, Richard, the first time I went through, I didn't perceive that.
Yeah.
But it's pretty obvious.
Neither did the people checking my Kickstarter campaign to approve it.
Yeah, my sense is that the checkers might be AI now. I could be wrong about that.
No, they're not. It's still people.
People, okay.
But it's a 64-page graphic novel that I made in an experimental way that explores my old comics, my new comics. I literally swim through some of my old titles, reversing the layers to go behind the coloring.
Yeah, great work with the color, by the way.
Thank you. It's a hard one to pitch, but I think I really push the limits of what a comic book can do.
For real. That's a good page too.
That's my favorite page.
1, 2, 3. Well, you probably know how many panels is that?
It's 12 with a 5-panel overlay. That's that's for the viewers at home. This is the page about a guy on Twitter.com talking some shit about how he never puts more than 5 panels in a comic script because he respects his artist's time.
I remember this conversation.
You remember the conversation? This guy makes the most boring comics I've ever read.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, you know, since you mentioned it, I'll just briefly touch on it. The Facebook creative market is sort of a challenging place to be. You know, there's not how do I want to say this in the most professional way? Everybody knows everything, and they've all got to tell you this, and they've got to tell you that. When the truth is, their books aren't very good.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, this is one man's opinion, you understand. At the end of the day, to me, it's how memorable was your book? How good was the writing? You know, did it really sell the art? Was it a comprehensive package? Is it something memorable? And I think that, man, you really have sort of nailed the assignment, Richard.
Because the thing is, I'm not going to be the best artist. I'm not going to draw the prettiest shit for you. I'm not going to draw your favorite superhero doing the best punching. I'm going to do, I really think I am becoming one of the best people at visual storytelling.
I would agree with that. Oh, there's Octopus right there.
There's Octopus. And there's for $50, you can get Octopus, Ambitious Failures, and Too Hot for Octopus together as the memoir bundle.
Gotcha.
There's the one that won the GLAAD Award, 4-Color Heroes. I won the fucking GLAAD Award. I'm a respectable gay now.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I would say respectable.
No, I am. I got an award. It says so.
Yeah. What was you were saying the other day, there was something that you weren't gay enough. What was it? To be included in some panel or something.
Oh, there was, okay. Oh, fuck it. I'll just tell this publicly. I have been consistently left out of certain lists of queer content at conventions and bumped from various signings and things like that. For a lot of excuses were given, but essentially it comes down to I'm not the right kind of gay. I'm not the kind of gay that my mother would be comfortable seeing on television.
What? Again, I'm not trying to start an argument, but what does that mean exactly?
I'm a dirtbag. Like when people, you know, the thing that gay people have been marginalized for has always been the sex they have. So the thing that pride movements, especially gay pride specifically, obviously, should be about is about saying like, no, we're actually proud of the sex. That actually is inherent to it. It doesn't have to be everyone's pride movement, but it's certainly a big part of what I think like pride represents. And it is a protest action. It is meant to be in your face. I am very open about the fact that I like sex clubs. I am open about the fact that I'm fairly slutty. I'm open about the fact that I, as you read in this book, have a lump of scar tissue in the back of my neck caused from giving too many blowjobs for the past 27 years of my life. I am an enthusiastic cocksucker, and I'm very fucking good at
it. It's funny, you know, we say some of this verbally, and it's in the visual format. This is very powerful material. So I've got to recommend to the viewers, if this sounds shocking to you now, this is really just a copy of what you're going to see in this book, and it's presented in a way that's, I almost want to say that's kind of not really what the book is about. It's firmly a memoir, and it's really sort of emotional and sort of it's kind of heartwarming in its way.
It's a book that will make people cry. It will give you all of the things I'm talking about, but it'll also make you sob just a little bit.
Yeah, and by the way, it's funny too.
Can I tell you a bit that there's a bit in it that I didn't get to include, which I sort of regret. I tell half of this story in it, so I'm just going to tell the whole story.
Okay.
I learned recently this fucking game-changing trick, and everyone should teach this. Learn it yourself if you want to suck a dick. Teach it to dick suckers if you need, if they need the help. Take your hand, press your thumb into the palm of your hand as hard as you can, and form a fist around it. It will release your gag reflex. Game-changing, absolutely fucking huge for me. Just amazing. Also, if you squeeze your butthole real tight, you stop crying. Just so you know.
Good to know.
Here's the thing. I was telling this to my new friend Aaron Reynolds, who creates Effin' Birds.
Oh, I just met that guy. He's awesome.
Such a good guy.
Yeah, you're not going to believe this. We're in Philly, and I'm the new guy in Philly. And he comes up, and I guess he's from Canadian, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was him. I met him and Becca Kinsey. Mm-hmm. Man, you couldn't have met two nicer people, and he even bought a copy of my book. I thought that was a really class act.
Wow, he's never bought my book, so fuck him.
He said you were a jerk.
Yeah, he sucks. No, one of my favorite people that I've gotten to know in the past year, and just incredibly funny.
Yeah.
And we're at Fan Expo in Denver, and it's at the bar one night, and I'm telling this to the table, or I'm telling this great trick, and he looks at me, leans, and he goes, "Richard, that's the symbol to let people know you're being trafficked."
Yeah, I saw that in the book. I didn't know that one either.
Yeah, that's the first half of the story. The thing that I didn't put in the book, which is his absolute fucking winning moment, and he should be very proud of this, he then leans in and cocks his head to the side and says, "Which means that every man who's ever seen you do that has decided not to help you."
That's gold. Aaron Reynolds, ladies and gentlemen. I got to give him a shout out on that one. Yeah, yep. Thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah, no, look, it's a good book. I think it's a book for everyone, strangely enough, despite being like, I don't know, a big fucking sloppy mess.
Recommended. Hey, and while we're on the subject of doing shout outs, like I say, we're almost out of time, but I sort of promised my pal, Jessica Mason, who could not be with us tonight, that I would give her a quick shout out on her book. This is Mary Shelley's School for Monsters, horror graphic novel 1 and 2. This is also good stuff. I love Jessica's work, if you guys don't know. And she was supposed to be joining us tonight, so I'm furious that she's not here.
Yeah, she's dead.
Yeah. So, but anyway, we'll see if we can drum up a little, some followers for her pre-launch for the new book. And
look, I want to just talk about this book a little bit. I love this book. It does like a fun reimagining of Frankenstein. Obviously, I am a big fan of reimaginings of Frankenstein because of my book, The Ex-Wives of Frankenstein. What Jessica has done with this is found a way to just say, like, let's just make a whole world. Let's make a whole cool world and like make a kid-friendly book that is still like engaging enough for everyone to kind of enjoy. It feels literary and clever, so you feel good about yourself for reading it.
Correct.
It'll just being kind of like a fairly light and fun exploration into horror adventure, you know?
Yeah, it's like a fresh take.
Yeah. Also, Jessica rules. Just an absolutely terrific person.
Yeah, I'm honestly one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, I said to Jessica recently, I was like, "You are the person I know who puts up with terrible men the most, and that makes me very confident we'll be friends forever." So,
yeah, she's been on the show a couple of times. We love talking about Frankenstein.
Yeah,
she even knows all the old 50s sci-fi movies, which I just think is amazing. Oh, there we go. I see the fireworks going off. 0 seconds.
We're done. We got 0 new followers from any of your. Is there any new backers from any of your viewers?
Oh, I you know what? I don't know yet. Let me refresh here quick.
Oh no! Oh, you think it'll?
No, maybe not. Maybe not.
No, you let me down completely.
I let you down completely.
What a terrible way to.
It is always a pleasure to see you, man. And Richard, I want to tell you, really, I value your time a lot, and I want to thank you for coming on to talk about your creative process. Thank you.
Now, should I now? I've written a list of my regular bankers who didn't show up for this one. Should I read out the names?
Yeah, go ahead. That'd be great.
Jessica Mason Judd. I actually have no idea. Imagine if that was just.
I don't think I realized we were that close to the time, or I would have harped on it a little heavier at the beginning, I guess.
No, I knew what I was doing. I needed a way to like actually make myself talk about this.
And I'm fond of pointing out, man, that really the thing of broadcasting your material on podcasting is a cumulative effect.
Can I just tell people, if anyone is still watching after this much great dick sucking advice, if they haven't gone out to find a cock to jam down their throat, here's the thing. I want to like let you know how much self-control I have. I am within arm's reach of like 9 different dildos right now, and I haven't said, "Look, it works." Like I'm a fucking hero.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that.
Well, here's. I want to give a shout out that to myself. One, launching next week is my new horror book, Frog Alley. It is at the core of it is a story about a little boy who goes to visit his grandfather, and his suitcase gets larger and larger until he realizes he can't just be there for the weekend, or he wouldn't need a suitcase that big. It is a haunting, weird book that has no simple tagline, and again, will creep you the fuck out and probably make you cry and feel hopeful all at once.
Nice.
I am working on a piece for an upcoming anthology from Chuck Satterley and some others called Pots and Panels, which will be a mixture of a recipe, a cookbook, and comics about food. I'm doing a story called There Are Two Dinosaurs Inside Me. I'm working on a story for a queer sports anthology with a story called Ball and Play, about the time that I absolutely decimated another boy's face in elementary school with a cricket bat. And I still somehow am the hero of that goddamn story. And a story called Legally Blind, where oh God, what's it called? Unseen Alchemy, something. Another anthology of queer stories about disabilities and neurodivergence, mine being about being legally blind and what that like allows me to get away with by being like, oh no, sorry, I can't help it. Technically blind.
Yeah.
And everything. So
I will look forward to that one as well.
And then Haunted 4, X-Files of Frankenstein 4, The Lights That Guide You Home, Wet Cement 2, and looking over at my whiteboard, which I can't see because I'm legally blind. My new porn series, Butt Stuff. About emotional baggage that stops sex from being enjoyable.
Well, that actually sounds pretty good.
It's gonna be great.
All right.
Like, imagine if the Big Chill was horny.
Oh, that's a great tagline, actually.
Yeah. And I hate cross pitching, but that's what it is.
Well, and we're just about to our time, so I just want to say in closing, thanks to the viewers for watching it. And thanks, Richard Fairgray, for coming on the show, man. I'm a fan. I was amazed by this last book, and I wish you every success with your creative projects.
Thank you. I'll see you in Baltimore.
Yeah, hope to see you there. Everybody else, we'll see you next Friday night. Thanks for watching.